Hi guys, Tyler Mouse, and this is the second attempt to do this live show. Basically, because I think YouTube's turned into and it's all fuzzy again. I'm looking at the live stream that I just tried to attempt. Right, came in, it messed up. I have this on the roll. I had the topic going. We had some people here who I hope are showing up, and I'm looking at the camera. Yes, back again, part two. And I'm looking at what I'm recording on, and I'm mirrored now, but I'm also looking online to see myself, and I'm all fuzzy, yet I'm clear on my camera. So let me assure you guys, this is a YouTube thing. So I'm going to be mirrored, but we'll be talking, right? Six people are back. I appreciate it, guys. Okay, back again. Dr. Silver Age is here. Cayman X is here. Yes. I have no idea why I am clear on my camera, but I am fuzzy on YouTube. So moving on to get what we were talking about. Now, I'm doing this live stream, and the reason I'm cracking a smile and the thing had just crashed 9 minutes into it and 4 minutes into it before that, but it picked up the stream. I was on a roll, but tomorrow I have to work. That's why it's not on Sunday. Yes, we're back, Kid Ragnarok. Thank you guys. Yes, sir. Hey, and to guys, tweet this thing, hit the bell, let people know that we're here and stuff. While YouTube is letting me stream, I don't know what the deal is. And I'm sorry about the quality. Again, not my fault. It's blowing my mind. But I quit smoking about 2 months ago. Um, and the weather's been bad. I've been working a lot. I put on 8 pounds. I'm kind of putting off a jog. Oh man, 7 to 10. Yeah, yeah. Come on back, people. But anyway, and tomorrow I have to work. That's why you're getting a Saturday stream instead of the Sunday morning stream. With the things that have been going on this past week, it's been just enough to get me to want to do a video and some topics going on. The first big thing is I'm going to say, comic books have been so overtly sort of kind of political over the last few years. When something finally comes to an end, like Trump's collusion and not being there and everything like that, it seems like it died down. I've seen a bunch of videos where people are talking about they've been dropping titles left and right, and I saw one in my feed this morning where somebody specifically said it was Black Panther. So there's a lot of people dropping books, but the biggest thing, all right, we're getting future videos things. But the biggest thing, and I'll read these comments in a minute. The biggest thing though is the fact that Zack Snyder, the guy who, you know, trying to do Justice League, and he's done Watchmen and Day of the Dead and a lot of things. And I think Day of the Dead, I need to go look at it. The movie that really broke Zack Snyder. I think it was written by James Gunn, who, of course, we all know him from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but I'll look that up later. But anyway, but Zack Snyder's apparently, we know what I think about Twitter, even though I kind of play around with it and stuff. And basically, I look at it when I have nothing else to do, when I'm stuck somewhere. You know what I mean? But Zack Snyder apparently said that Batman would kill, which seemed to like make people go lose their minds. And my biggest thing is what version of Batman? Does it depend on what you grew up on? Are you talking about your movies Batman? Are you into the movies? Are you talking about the many, many, many different kind of Batmans from the golden age to now? Because there are Batman that will kill. And right before the stream died, from my viewpoint, stuff like that, I was pointing out even in the movies Batman has killed. Um, Somebody jumped in there, and please put your comment back in here if you're still watching again. But Tim Burton's Batman, that Batman was really split down the middle, like he was saying to Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer, and stuff. But in the first movie that seems to really get ignored is that Batman had the Batmobile on remote control, and it dropped a bomb in a warehouse or something, and it killed a bunch of people. Batman will kill. It just depends what version you're talking about. All right, cool. We're getting some clarification here. Nice. James Gunn apparently did write Day of the Dead. All right, but anyway, who said that? All right, thank you. Make sure if you're watching this on rerun, make sure you hit those live chat comments so you can read the show along with watching it if you want. But the biggest thing that got me was, Zack Snyder. What we got to remember is this: I'm not really here to discuss is Zack Snyder right or wrong. I think he's right, but it depends on the Batman. Everybody can be right. If you're a fan and you grew up on the Adam West Batman, he's not going to kill. Batman the animated series, I think there's some potential that he would have killed. There's an episode of Brave and the Bold that was a throwback, the Brave and the Bold cartoon, the one with the Dick Sprang feel to it, going back to the 50s Batman and stuff, you know what I'm saying? That show, but there was a episode there that was a throwback to Batman the Animated Series, and it got dark. He was going after Joe Chill. It was the first time that I think that Batman in Brave and the Bold cartoon took off his mask, and we got to see Bruce Wayne. And I think it was written by Bruce Timm or Paul Dini or something. But anyway, I regress here, right? But the thing about it is that you can sit there and talk about all this stuff. Yeah, the Joe Chill episode. That's right, man. But the biggest thing is that what I'm trying to get at is I've picked out 3 books here, 3 characters, if you will. Okay, we'll slow down here a little bit. Future video idea from Gray Man Media. Future video idea: Marvel DC ownership of the term superheroes, and their attempts to lawsuit their lawsuits of competitions out of existence. There's a lot of history on that, going back to the golden age with National Periodical, or whatever they called themselves back then, going after Fawcett Comics over Shazam, because it was basically outselling Superman. You have Marvel doing a lot of shady stuff, so yeah, that really doesn't surprise me, if you will. So yeah, I don't know if there's enough for an actual video, but it's actually a better piece of trivia. But I'll look into it. If there's enough for a video, yeah, we'll look at it. Dawn of the Dead remake. You're right, written by James Gunn. And I'm not sure how to say your name. Okay. I'm waiting on Frank Miller's Superman Year One by Cayman X. Talked about that in a video I shot on my phone. I played around with a DU recorder on my phone and had some images, so I've talked about that a little bit. But I'm interested to see what it is, even if it turns out to be a dumpster fire. I think it's going to be fun, and I'm interested. My hope is that this is the story that Frank Miller has had in his head for over 30 years. That's what I'm hoping for. The interview that I talked about from Wizard Magazine number 40 or something from back in the day. He kind of gave you the idea that he's always had that in his head. The Joe Chill episode, going back to the Brave and Bold. Yep. Even the Brave and Bold cartoon was cool in its own style. Gray Man Media. Yeah, it was fantastic. The Brave and the Bold cartoon, I remember seeing some interview with Paul Dini and some people, and it was I don't know if it was on the Batman Animated Series DVD sets that I have as they were coming out, but there was somebody that worked on the show who said that it was his dream to do the Dick Sprang style of cartoon. I mean, he had a dream and it happened. So that's what's so cool about that cartoon. It's from somebody who worked on the Batman, the animated series of the 90s and the Timverse, if you will. Maybe it was a Justice League thing. I don't know. But whoever's behind that cartoon worked with Paul Tim and stuff, right? It's Alekos. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't want to sit here and give it a try on my channel and end up saying it wrong. They did the Rainbow Batman episode. Yeah, absolutely. Good or bad, it's interesting. No, I thought the Brave and the Bold cartoon was fantastic. I mean, we're getting off topic. I've got the season where it's got Commandy and OMAC on it. I got that DVD set. Just today, I had to school someone on IG about the Fawcett DC because dude claimed Marvel ripped off DC with Captain Marvel. Kid Ragnarok, yeah. That's why when I came back doing this videos, it's things like that where, like I said, this channel is going to be a little bit more of an island on its own. You know what I mean? I'm gonna kind of talk to people like they know what they're talking about. They're seasoned collectors. I'll slow things down a little bit, but yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. Oh, Frank Miller, good or bad, will be interesting. Yeah, Cayman X, I agree. The Superman Year One that Frank Miller is doing, good or bad, it'll be interesting. And like I said, I've got a video I think I put up a week ago or something where I kind of talk about it a little bit. It will definitely, when it comes out, it will definitely be talked about. Was Drew Carey in an episode of Batman B&B? Gray Man Media, when it comes to trivia like that, it wouldn't surprise me if Drew Carey was on an episode, but I don't know for sure. Okay. But, nice. Keep the comments coming, guys. I'll just kind of keep the flow going here. But the biggest thing that I was going to talk about was like Zack Snyder, all these people lose their minds on Twitter. Twitter outrage in general cracks me up. It cracks me up, man. Like, there's this whole war going on online that nobody knows about, and I see people on Twitter also getting a kick out of this is their accomplishment in life. You know what I mean? Like, I have a following of people. Look at the numbers. We're going to deplatform people. We're going to close accounts and stuff, and this is their achievement in life. Yeah, I sound judgy, but I don't care. I mean, I'm like, it really blows my mind. So for Zack Snyder to make the news, pissing off that many people online, he's right. Superheroes can kill. Batman is a vigilante. He's in Dark Knight Returns. the government was after him. Superman worked for the government. Superman the hero was not that. But in general, superheroes could actually be a scary thing. I think I was introduced to it in the concept of the Legends crossover that came out of Crisis on Infinite Earth. I remember hearing liberal hippies that were more like Green Arrow in real life that were around my house when I was a kid. They would be talking about vigilantism and comic books around me and stuff and taking it places. I was just sort of like, you're smoking too much weed, man. But, and it turns out as I've gotten older, I get what they're saying now. But the biggest thing is that, think about this, if this was real life and all of a sudden you got somebody with all this power stepping up and they're saying that they know right and wrong over you and stuff, that's pretty scary. You know what I mean? They have no training, no authority, no one's designated them. They don't work for anybody. They're free agents. That can be a scary thing. Now, as comic book collectors, I think it's a little bit more hard for us to kind of grasp that idea to a certain extent because of everything we've read. I'm on record in a ton of my videos going way back to the beginning that these were morality stories, right and wrong, good, evil worlds. And a lot of books have gotten around and stuff by being up in space and being crime comics, depending on the genre. But when it comes to the superhero thing, it's real easy for those things to be real fascist. You know what I mean? It used to be that superheroes were reactionary. Okay, there's something the cops can't handle, or the Joker's out there killing people, and I can only handle the Joker, or things like that were coming down, or I'm seeing a crime right in front of me. And people have played around with how people can screw things up, if they stick their nose where it doesn't belong. And around the 90s, really with really with Mark Grunwald's Squadron Supreme miniseries in the 80s, it kind of shows what happens when heroes become proactive and they try to take over. That 12 issue miniseries deals with taking away your Second Amendment rights. It takes, America was in shambles, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's what they did. They took away guns, and they gave you pacifier guns that made people feel good or something. Who knows? And then they had behavior modification where they were thought police. They would change your behavior even if you were a criminal and stuff, and they showed that, well, that's not bad. And basically, just wipe their butt with like the Constitution and free will and letting people live their lives and the government being too involved is what it was saying. Then you get into Kingdom Come, where it shows where the heroes get bored and they start fighting each other, and they don't have the morals of the generation before them and things. And then you had the authority, and a lot of people worked out the authority where they decided we're going to take out some world leaders that are bad. Let's do some comments here, right? Only asking the DC show actor who played Batman B&B. Oh, yeah, no biggie, man. I wish there was a Silver Age Superman show. I love Silver Age Superman. My favorite Superman cartoons, which are the Fleischer Superman cartoons from the 40s. They're public domain. I've had the same two DVD sets. One where they have like the scientists, and they split them up with like Mad Scientist on one and I don't know, sci-fi stuff on the other or something. But that's my favorite Superman cartoons. Those Fleischer cartoons are just pure Superman with some cool stuff. My most favorite episode is one where they go into the caves and you have the bird people. It makes me think of Northwind, Infinity Incorporated, the race that he came from and all this stuff in a way. I don't want to get into that or we'll be here all day. Marvel once sued the makers of City of Heroes. Marvel sued a lot of people. And I think if we just went straight court cases in comics, company versus company, company versus creators and things like that, there's a hell of a story to be told there. I'm still mad about what they did to, I think it was Gary Friedrich, who co-created or did create Ghost Rider. What they did to him was the last straw for me. I was like, oh my God. Sci-fi debris documentary, Rise and Fall of the Comic Empires, about the business side of comics. Awesome, Cayman X. Cayman X, you really need to start doing some videos. You've always got some good stuff when you comment on here. John C. has arrived. Awesome, man. So, with that concept that if you really want to look at it, all superheroes, they're not deputized. Now, one of the things that got me, and I hope I'm not repeating myself in this video from the other videos, that I've seen over the years people arguing about Superman of all things. And I was no fun in those conversations, if you will, because I'm the guy that would pop up with the proof, right? One of the things they wanted to do, and this wasn't that long ago, people were wanting to say that, they pulled in the Trump thing in there, and they were trying to pull Superman in there, saying that Superman was an illegal alien on this planet. Well, no, John Byrne in the 80s, and I think there's a possibility that it was acknowledged before that, but John Byrne in the 80s had a comic book where the birthing matrix that Superman was in his rocket was actually, he was actually growing as a baby in there, if you get what I mean. It was a womb. And when he landed on Earth and he was on Kansas and that birthing matrix opened, it was the same as him being birthed from a woman because that was the function of it. So he was born in America. If anything, he'd be an anchor baby. The other thing was they were talking about him being a vigilante. And again, John Byrne, and this was also mentioned in comics in different ways over the years, from Superman working with Kennedy and the government and stuff like that, being asked to do things and stuff. But Burns specifically had it to where Superman was deputized. He whipped out the badge or something in one of the comics that John Byrne worked on in the 80s. So I'm the guy that all these people are wanting to fight back and forth. And I'm like, well, no, if you look at this issue, I mean, I've got the long box of Superman comics over here, and I was able to find those. It's ridiculous. So there's ways that people have acknowledged it over the years. But I mean, I think it's a real scary thing that, if superheroes are becoming real, we got somebody sitting there that we don't know, hiding their face, sitting there telling you what right and wrong is in their hands. We see them in the comic books. Comic books, that medium of comic books that sets it apart from everything else is that it's very introspective. You don't really have another medium per se. I mean, novels maybe. You know, most novels stuff, but where you see inside the character's head. That's why I hate the thought balloons. People have shied away from them and stuff. You really get to see inside of them. And that's why we have a trust of heroes. We followed them when they were serialized regularly, month to month and stuff, right? We knew them. We knew their parents. We knew their girlfriends. We knew their job. You know what I mean? Okay, here we go. The biggest problem with American style comic books is that they produce the same style of heroes. They don't make new heroes. They're constantly rebooting. Yeah, Gray Man, and that's what I've said. That's been the problem with heroes. Nobody is creating new things at the big two, and a lot of people will jump in and say, "Well, the big two, Marvel and DC, aren't all comics," and they're absolutely right. They're the ones people are most aware of, though. And people are not wanting the ideas. Companies aren't wanting to give royalties. People want to hold on to their own ideas in case they can put out a comic and get a TV show like Walking Dead and get that big money. Kid Ragnarok. For better or worse, many of these characters are so ingrained into the zeitgeist that's a lot of non-readers think they're knowledgeable merely because they're aware of them. Yeah, and a lot of what's gone on, that it really isn't a problem. I don't want to make it sound like it's like our new Vietnam or something here, our new culture war here and stuff like that. But online, there's a lot of people who have been in comics for a hot 5 minutes, and they really portray themselves like some kind of knowledgeable person, and they have lines that they'll throw at you to try to cut you down if you're talking to them. This has only happened online a little bit, a few Facebook groups and stuff. Luckily, I found a few places that I can just talk to other people, and we don't really have to deal with this anymore. But they'll come out there and be like, "You're just some old. You sound like some old guy's got boxes and boxes of comics." And I'm like, "Well, I'm some old guy who has boxes and boxes of comics, which means I know my stuff." They come out there and they want to portray themselves as like the alpha comic book collector or something in these groups. They're going for social status or whatever they're doing. I can't get into that mindset of portraying yourself as something you're not and maintaining it for something online. So that's a whole other thing. So yeah, that's a whole new breed. I remember back in the early comic book communities, the biggest fight I ever saw was fake fans. Boob tube, girls cosplaying and taking advantage of. I just remember when it was like more about the hobby and less about trying to be somebody. And I've seen YouTube videos come and go where you can tell who these guys are that just didn't know what they were talking about. Felt bad for them. So I like some of the comic books that came out. Now, I've talked about Marshal Law before. I'm going to show you my first Marshal Law book. This is where I found Marshal Law. I saw him in, I might have it here, but I saw him in some advertisements first in the 80s, right? Through Epic Comics. And this is going to, God, that quality is horrible. But anyway, yeah. The Ultimate Stormwatch. Warren Ellis and the Thunder Ancients look at government-owned superheroes. Okay, Cayman X. Yeah, if I'm thinking about the right ones you're talking about, the Thunder Agents, Wally Wood's Thunder Agents, I finally got 2 or 3 of those to read, and I'm gonna be reading about those. I've heard about those Dynamo and all of them. Yeah, but Martial Law was the first one. I've always said there was a trilogy in the 80s of 3 books that really changed what was going on, right? And I kind of give Squadron Supreme the honorable mention, okay? But that's not one of them. You had Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, Watchmen by you know, Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, who everybody knows, you know, all that they know those two books. But then you had Martial Law come out, and this is a brutal freak book. Um, when I read this one, this is the one where it's so in your face with things. It's so testosterone filled and in your face, and it really goes after hypocrisy and fraud and things like that with heroes. But basically, what's going on is that thanks to, I can't remember if it's genetic engineering or some chemicals like reproducing the super soldier formula with a hack at it, but this is huge satire against all superheroes, right? And Marshall Law is actually a deputized agent who's part of, see, San Futurio. I think there was a big earthquake in San Francisco, and they've got a headquarters there. Yeah, there we go. Now we're jumping on there. Right. Everybody's, yeah. But he comes out here, but he hates heroes. This book is all about satire and heroes and calling out. They go after everybody. Golden Age heroes, Marvel, DC, everybody, right? And it also gets into like a real weird psychology of what it would be like to have powers and stuff. If you can't inflict pain on others, then you're going to, you still have a human brain, so it really messes you up, and a lot of the criminals are inflicting pain on other people because they can't feel it. I mean, it really gets into some weird, goes into weird places, right? But it's also written very smart. That's its saving grace. There actually are plots and characters you can still get invested into, right? But basically, there was like this huge Vietnam, and a lot of these people have come back from Vietnam, and the government gave them powers, and it was satiring the you know, what the government did with the Vietnam vets. This set them out there before there were vet centers and handled them psychologically. They get in there and just talking about just hating heroes. The public servant, who was like a Superman slash Captain America figure, that was Martial Law's hero growing up and why he joined the military. And then he actually got to like meet him and see the military and get to know heroes. And they're full of crap. You know what they're saying. Now the first one was that epic through 6 issues. I have those. Okay, and it gets into serial rapist, shot at Batman a little bit. I mean, the artwork is brutal in some of this stuff. You can sit there and go over what he did over and over and over with the art by itself. That Pat Mills, this is by Pat Mills and Kevin O'Neill, and Kevin O'Neill came into you know, his own with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But yeah, it's got you know, when you can't feel pain, you have a healing factor. They played around with that. Martial Law wraps barbed wire around his arm, which became a big symbol of himself. Um, but like I said, I found him in this one, Martial Law Super Babylon, where he's able to interact with some Golden Age heroes, and they call out the hypocrisy and the fraudulent stuff of superheroes staying here in America while the real heroes, the normal humans world, are getting killed over uh, in Germany and whatnot, in Europe and stuff, right? Then he calls out the weirdness of having little kid sidekicks with you, and the weirdness of fetishism. He gets into the fetish part of it and the alcoholism and stuff like that. And then Martial Law ends up becoming self-loathing because he realizes he is a hero whether he wants to admit it or not. Now this is a great read. Now you gotta understand that this is a dark book, but it's also fun to read with its satire. I would highly go read Martial Law Takes Manhattan, because this is based on the Marvel heroes. This is the same thing as, this is through Epic. They're still working at Marvel, and these are a satire of the Marvel heroes. And we get a tie-in with a character in here who's basically the Punisher, and he has a tie to martial law. But what's really cool about this one is that all the heroes are in an insane asylum, and we get to get a psychological talk about them, the delusion that they're heroes and stuff, and why. Because when I was a kid, I kind of like had this idea of some of the things I read. I had to remember it was a comic book, because you know, I had a tabloid, a big Marvel Treasury edition of Galactus coming down and going after Fantastic Four again. I think it was reprinting Fantastic Four 120 through 123 or something. And the splash page had Reed Richards had a machine for his kid that made chocolate chip cookies in like 8 seconds. And I'm like, well, doesn't he mass produce this? And then it started making me think. I was like, there's all kinds of technology they're not sharing. Then I started thinking about Iron Man. You know, he's got all this robotic machinery, and he's not sharing it with people who are quadriplegic and stuff. And so as I was growing up, I kind of caught some of this stuff on my own, you know, and was like, ah, it's just a comic book, don't overthink it. All right, here we go. Wasn't there a Viz Comics anime version on Martial Law? Martial Law got bounced around to a few places, and a lot of those places, two of the places, Apocalypse Comics and somebody else went bankrupt and they ended up at Dark Horse and they bounced around some more. They actually came out with a huge omnibus of all the martial law material. I don't think there's Marshall Law also was with I got Pinhead and Hellblazer crossover when he went back to Epic after being at Dark Horse in a few places. There's a Savage Dragon crossover, a 2-issue miniseries more or less with Savage Dragon where he's kind of redeemed. He kind of finds peace. And then there's I think there's a Martial Law and Mask one. I think he's been all over the place. So if there's anything at Viz, I'm not. It's not gonna. I think what you're talking about is I think there was a show that was online in the early 2000s through a website. That might be it. I never got to see those. Okay. Um, really need to get into comic book publishing before I go away. Patricia O'Neill. Never mind. Just remember it was Iron Marshal. Well, Evan, like I said, there was something online about some martial law stuff. It's just so obscure. That's an interesting first read since it's a follow up to Hateful Dead published by Apocalypse. There you go. And nowhere in there do they mention that in the comic. Right. Right. I think I got the Apocalypse comic right here. One of them. I think there was two and they had to finish up somewhere. I don't know. I got a couple copies of it. But yeah, the martial law stuff was all over the place. I mean, it was a nightmare if you were really following the comic. This is pre-internet days too. So yeah, I've got a lot of this stuff here. Brat Pack nails the weirdness of teen sidekicks. Kid Ragnarok, the Brat Pack. I have Rick Veitch on Vetch Veitz on Facebook, and he's been pushing the. They've reprinted it. They collected it again and put it out. I'm gonna try to get the Brat Pack. Another book that I just saw in advertisements when I was a kid, and probably after the fact that it came out because I was buying back issues when I can make it to a comic book shop. Here's some more martial. Like I said, I got a ton of martial law stuff. I'm probably only missing one or two books. Savage Dragon book, all the epic issues, Apocalypse. I got another copy of some of this stuff. The Mask, and here's like Martial Law in Hell going up against Pinhead from Hellraiser. Is that in one bag? Yeah, I got multiple copies of these where I've tried to collect all of them over the years. So we can get that in there. Yeah, martial law is good stuff. I recommend cracking it down. All right, where we at here? We've not had sidekick help heroes in comics for a long time. I'll talk about that in a minute. The thing about the sidekicks, that was something that was of their time. The era they came out with, there was a reason that was kind of believable, plausible. I still can't believe Epic even published Martial Law Takes Manhattan, such a vicious skewing of the Marvel Universe. Sorry for all the comments. No, you're fine, man. Kid Ragnarok, bring them on. Martial Law, the skewing of it, that's it. That's just it. Back in the day, people didn't really take themselves too serious. That's how it came off as a reader. I have more respect for Marvel back in the day that could publish Martial Law Takes Manhattan than I do for what they're doing now, where they take themselves so serious and they want to preach at you. They take themselves too serious, and then they're up on that pedestal. Something like Marvel Universe and satire, you got to be able to laugh at yourself before you can say anything about anybody else, in my opinion. So that's the Marvel I respect back in the day, and I'm just assuming a lot of those people are no longer there. There is indeed a Masked Martial Law. I have it in my stack here. Like I said, I've had this stuff for a while. Gray Man Media, but martial law represents the sway dark onks period where comics were in postmodernist, deconstructist mindset because of its 90s cool. Yeah, and that carried over from the 80s. You know, that really killed a lot of the, I mean, you know, Alan Moore's even said it, acknowledged it. You know, Watchmen unintentionally killed a lot of the innocence of the comics. And to make up for it, he came out with his ABC comics through Wildstorm before Marvel pulled him up, and that's where you got your America's Best Comics. That's where you got your Tom Strong, your Gray Shirt, your Promethea, you know, all those books from that line, which were fantastic. It was kind of bringing back some of the innocence back to the comics and the fun that he felt like Watchmen made, you know, pulled away from the comics and stuff, right? There was a lot of stuff that spawned from that was good, but there's a lot of people making the same books over and over and over. I mean, you know, it's like the reason hair metal died isn't because of grunge, even though that didn't help. It was because everybody was making the same kind of music, you know. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, I didn't see Samo Marshall book. Can't be that. That's funny. Samo Hung. That's hilarious. Tangent Comics by DC talk about heroes sharing tech to normal heroes, though I have not read it myself. The Tangent Comics. I got an issue here or there. I did that by creator. If I yeah, I did that by creator. That's I didn't really get into that line of comics. Uh, the event, if you will. I recently completed collecting all the martial law floppies. Mask martial law runs for more than it should. Really, mask and martial law. Yeah, I can. I got mine cheap. I found mine for $1 a piece, but it took forever just to find them in the wild. But anyway, I like the martial law books, but you're in for an event. You know, you're gonna have to sit down and you probably have to read them twice, man, because it's so in your face and it could be so overwhelming with the art and you know you need to take your time with it. The Marvel Universe was created off the back of very small publishers they acquired their characters from. Thoughts? Uh, I don't know if it was so much characters. I'm not sure who you would be referring to when they talk about small publishers. A lot of the characters they brought back was from that's you understand Marvel was Atlas and Timely Comics before they just kept rebranding themselves, renaming themselves. So I'm not real sure about what you're getting at the back of very small publishers. That's a topic I'd be interested in hearing a viewpoint on. From what I understand, a lot of the people who worked at Marvel at the beginning there were the misfits, Ditko, Kirby, Lee, and all those guys. They were the misfits in their 40s. The initial martial law run was from 87 to 89. I had that over here. It suffered from serious delays, 6 issues in 3 years, and still love it. That's I like when I came in. That's what I'm saying when it comes to back issues and comics, not wasting my time with modern comics, that much and stuff. All this stuff is out there. There's no wait. You know what I mean? We get to see what's rose cream to the crop. We get to dig in and find little neat stuff that nobody else sees. Young helper characters have been in pulp and adventure stories for years. Now, just to kind of comment on that, the sidekick thing in the 20s, 30s, 40s, all that stuff before we had child labor laws come in and all that stuff. I mean, you had kids who actually worked in this country. They were small, right? And so factories would send them into machinery that was broke down because they were small enough to get to places. There were kids walking around with nubs for fingers and stuff where they would lose them and stuff. There was no child labor laws. You had kids of working in mines and stuff, kids walking around. It was a different time. People were much more mature. People were fighting wars at 16, 17, and 18, lying about their age and then coming home and picking right up where they left off. It was a different time, so kids were tough. You had things like the Newsboy Legion, and I'm forgetting somebody else Kirby did. But you had characters. I mean, we focus on the sidekicks like Robin and Speedy and Dan the Dynamite and Bucky and things like that. But you had like the Guardian and the Newsboy Legion. You had little gang books and stuff, and it was Kirby remembering. He based those characters off of friends of his when they were running the streets in New York. You know what I mean? Um, so it's just a much different time now as we've gotten older and child labor laws have come in and education gets pushed and all sorts of different things have happened over 80 years, if you will. Yeah, different time, and now it's ridiculous to him. Stan Lee hated sidekicks, right? But I think the biggest thing that's happened with the sidekicks is letting a lot of these sidekicks grow up, starting with Dick Grayson as Nightwing. All right, we got Nightwing out of it. And it's really amazing because the two most famous sidekicks are the ones that really rose to be something, right? We have the original Bucky who's supposed to stay dead with Uncle Ben, became the Winter Soldier. That was done right. You had Jason Todd come back. That was done right. Where he became the Red Hood and all this stuff, right? It's all in story. You can pull off. I think you can pull off anything in comic books if you have the right story and know what you're talking about. That's a lot what's missing. I mean, basically stole the character basis from smaller companies. For example, Captain America versus Archie's Shield. If I'm remembering right, Shield may have been created by Jack Kirby. He's got. Wait, is that the Fighting American? See, when we get into all these political characters and stuff like that, there has to be a little bit more digging done to be sure. But yeah, um, you get a character you want to be. The problem is the color scheme, right? If you want to have a patriotic hero, you got three colors to pick from and some stars and a motif, and it gets real easy to get in there and become part of the zeitgeist, a movement. People doing the same thing, changing at the same time. I always compare it to music. Punk was a movement. The British invasion was a movement. They all came from the same reference material. When it come, we had Tim Hunter, who predated Harry Potter, and there was another character in the 80s that popped up that was also like Harry Potter. Neil Gaiman won't touch it. He just says that he and J.K. Rowling had the same influences. So it's one of those things you really got to dig in there and make sure there's something there to say. Back then, people were copying characters left and right. You have a character like the Spirit, and you have Midnight. That's a blatant ripoff. So it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. You really got to get in there and dig in there and research this stuff a little bit if you want to do it. Terry and the Pirates by Minton Caniff. Finished dinner just in time. Paulo, what's up? William Bird, kids' sidekicks were just a way of appealing to their target audience for kids the same age as the sidekick. Absolutely. That is why Robin was brought in, was to get kids reading it. They see somebody that's with them. Absolutely. Yeah. I was stuck in the era instead of the reason. But yeah, that's absolute. They come out and said that's absolutely where Robin came from. And once kids started buying the comics, everybody got a sidekick. I kind of liked how people tried to at least play with the idea. The Star Spangled Kid should have been the sidekick, and Stripe, the adult, should have been the hero, but they switched it. He was the hero, and the adult was his sidekick. I get where they're coming from. I mean, there was no blueprint for this. This was like the dawning of these heroes taking off and stuff. People were playing around, discovering things, making rules, hoping they got lightning in a bottle, working all over the place. Look what happened to the Sandman. Golden Age Sandman came full circle. Golden Age Sandman, gas mask, hat, influence. I mean, everybody looked like the Shadow back then. You know what I mean? And then they turned around and gave him a superhero costume. And then, thank God, in the '90s he came back, or '80s or whatever, came back with his original look. In an odd way, how are young superheroes going to learn the trade without being apprentices? I guess. Yeah, I get you. I get you. I've never identified with the sidekicks. I always wanted to be the real hero. Shield was made by Irv Novak. I believe Kirby did create Fighting American, though I'm mostly familiar with Liefeld's extreme version. Oh yeah, yeah, that was a big thing going on back in the day, where Rob Liefeld jumped off the Heroes Reborn or what it was in the '80s, where basically some of the Marvel books were given to the Image Studios, if you will, and then he took off and came out to Fighting American after he got kicked off of Captain America. It was just a slap in the face towards Marvel is what it was. At least Xavier physically abused the new kids in a safe school environment. I want to talk about them in a minute. We're going to run long, guys. Speaking of Rob, how do you feel about his new Major X Dredd multi-ref off character? Um, I'll read it if I can run across a copy. I'll probably end up reading it online. I like to see what he's doing. I did read comment and something he put on Twitter saying he's trying to get back to when comics were comics. I can't remember how he put it. But yeah, I mean, I'll read it and make my decision then, if you will. They've already had a satire character of Judge Dredd that popped up in Walt Simonson's Thor. I mean, Judge Dredd's okay. One of the things I was going to bring up was Dredd. This is a good segue about Dredd being all about law versus being all about justice. But see, we talk about Major X. I can't read anything with the Batman who smiles or whatever his name is now because I see him. All I see is Judge Death from Judge Dredd. And I'm like, just acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Have somebody just acknowledge in the comic the resemblance. You know what I mean? So I really don't have an opinion on Major X now, but I will check it out to get an opinion. I'll be honest about it. Rob Liefeld is a guy who I've always felt like he needs somebody to funnel him. I think he's a good idea man, but he needs somebody to kind of channel him. That's what I think. I've cut him a break. I've come to peace with his stuff over the years and stuff, right? Batman ripoff was inspired by the Black Bat and Shadow and Zorro and all kinds of things. But the difference thing about Batman is that they've always come out and said where he was influenced from. The pulps, the cave was Zorro. He got a Batmobile because Zorro had a black horse, that kind of thing. And even in Dark Knight Returns, Batman rides a black horse. That's a throwback to Zorro influence. You know what I'm saying? I've seen all kinds of Batman stuff. I think a cartoon or two or something like that where they turn around and they acknowledge those things. I mean, Grant Morrison took the Batman of Zen Ra or something like that. Anyway, even Grant Morrison threw some stuff in there. I'm going to be getting off and going down memory lane trying to remember this stuff, but that's okay. Who would uh who would be ECW's Sandman's sidekick? The Blue Meanie. Well, no, probably Becky Lynch nowadays. All right, let's see if I can get some of these comments coming in. I think I skipped a few here. Dave McKenzie, hello from Canada, out and about today, but I look forward to watching this tomorrow for my Sunday morning Comic Fox fun. Awesome, man. Like I said, I'm working tomorrow morning. That's why I'm putting this out today. So yeah, man, go for it. He does look sort of dread like. Yeah, well, you know what? There's also who's those green soldiers that worked at Project Pegasus, the guardsmen or something like that. I kind of thought he looked like those. They had green uniforms, and Tony Stark had given those. I mean, we're going way back. He'd given those armor to Project Pegasus. God, what were they called? I thought he looked like that. I thought he looked like just repainted Project Pegasus guards there. Getting a phone call. Um, I dig the Batman who laughs, but damn, does he look like Judge Dredd? Yeah, that's my problem. You know what I mean? I mean, it takes me out of what I've read about him. I've ordered the first issue. I'm busy. I ordered the first issue of the miniseries, and then I stopped there. You know, I'm gonna read it, see if I can get into him a little bit more. Nice to see less Liefeld hate nowadays. Yeah, yeah, I am too. I mean, there were times that it was just like if Rob Liefeld. I mean, it got bad. I didn't think the guy deserved that much hate, but I totally got it. You know what I mean? I mean, I got people. I think people just got sick of Liefeld. Overexposure and the jokes and things like that. You know, I think things turned around for him during DC 52. Yeah, the phone rang, but yeah, I'm going to call them back in a little while. Major X is the blandest Liefeld design ever. It's like AC/DC suddenly doing an acoustic cover of My Heart Will Go On. Damn, Paulo. That's savage. Terry and the Pirates by Milton Caniff and Johnny Quest had kid helpers on adventure, so I think it can still be done today. It's all context and storytelling. I mean, Goonies. I mean, I always tie music and stuff like that. Goonies and Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. There's all kinds of things you can do. We kind of get stuck in the superhero mindset of fighting and violence and kids do this and stuff. Kids are capable of doing a lot more than what we give them credit for. And I'm not going to get into the millennial generation because not all kids act like the same kind of millennials and stuff, right? So, it'd be nice the man Becky Lynch. That's funny. Yep, phone call every time. Phone, yep, it's not, what was it? My last live show, somebody said it wasn't a Howler Mouse live show until the phone rang. Project Pegasus would make a great setting for a comic book TV show or comic book anthology series. Did you ever think comics reuse ideas too much? Yeah, I do. It's one thing to say. I'm one of those guys where I'm into the continuity. I think that's it's cool to have continuity, and I've seen ever since Joe Quesada popped up, taking over Marvel way back in 2000, 2001, whatever it was. All of a sudden, that's when creators really started shouting they hated continuity. They hated continuity. It keeps them from telling stories. It keeps them from doing this. It keeps them from doing that. I think you can respect it and pull from their history and make great books. You know what I mean? I think so they reuse ideas too much for two reasons. They get desperate, and they also think that people don't remember those stories. That's when I think it's kind of lame. I had to live through Legion reboots. You know what I mean? After Zero Hour, Roger Stern, Wade, and a bunch of guys came on, and they were sort of retelling the Silver Age stories of the Legion and stuff, but with a modern twist and stuff, right? And that's one of the reasons why just until the last 2 or 3 years, when some of my buddies have sent me some of those books, I've finally started picking them up. So I've lived through that stuff. But yeah, blatant reuse of ideas over and over. you go back to like old Saturday morning cartoons, there was like 7 stories. Every cartoon had 7 stories. You grew old, you shrunk, and got chased by a cat. There's only 7 stories, is what everybody was trying to say and stuff like that. And I've got a Flash Gordon DVD here of the 1979 fantastic filmation cartoon of Flash Gordon, where they were talking about why the second season changed. And it was because they wanted the stories rehashed. They were doing new stuff in the first season and following the old comic strips and stuff, which was fantastic, but they couldn't air them because it was a serial. They had to do them in order, and that made the network crazy. So they came down and said, "You're going to tell these stories," and thus we got the story of Flash Gordon shrinking and stuff like that. You had Star Trek where they had to do the story where they all grew old, things like that. All right, so I was getting on to Judge Dredd there. That was a good segue. I appreciate whoever did that and stuff, right? But you had the whole idea of Judge Dredd, and I have become a huge, huge Dredd fan in the last couple years. Now, I've said it before. First time I heard about Dredd was here in the States was thanks to Anthrax doing the song "I Am the Law," and then you kind of started hearing about Judge Dredd after that. I don't know when the books finally came over here, maybe the '90s or something like that. But the first time I actually got to get my hands on Judge Dredd was in a comic scene interview with Simon Bosley and John Wagner or Alan Grant or somebody where they were doing the Batman Judge Dredd crossover. That has got to be the first time I read Dredd. So my whole philosophy on Dredd came from that interview and from that book and things I've been able to pick up over the years. But for some reason, the last couple of years, it has just picked up. The whole idea is that they're saying that Batman could take down Dredd if they got into a real fight because Dredd is more about the letter of the law and Batman is more about justice, and the law isn't always about justice. Now, the whole idea about Judge Dredd, for you guys who don't know, there's this like post-apocalyptic world, and cities are as big as the coastlines of a continent. You know what I mean? And they have mega cities. So, in order to have any kind of law and order going on, you are designated a judge, which means you get your motorcycle and you get your big badge, and you are judge, jury, and the police all in the same spot. You get them on the spot, and you call in what their, how many days you're going to put them in the hole and talk about their crimes and stuff, right? So, of course, when Batman popped up, Batman is a vigilante. One of the funniest things I saw in Judge Dredd was it's satire. I understand that the thing is supposed to be satire of America, but I think it's turned into its own thing. Of course it has. And that movie that came out in 2012, oh my God, I love that movie. That's just I have to hide it from myself. I can watch it over and over. But anyway, but the funniest thing I saw that they would use to introduce to put in these interviews or any kind of comic journals or whatever, comic magazines to talk about Dredd, they would always use this one where somebody was threatening to jump off a building. Judge Dredd comes down and said, "Suicide is against the law. Come down safely, or I'm going to shoot you because you're breaking the law." And that's the epitome of Dredd. So Dredd comes in there, and there's like vigilantism. They kind of explored it with Batman a little bit. There was a technicality in the law, so people, not throw Batman in the brig. I mean, he handed Batman his ass there a little bit, but I think Batman was letting him. I need to go back and read that story. There were 3 Batman and Judge Dredd crossovers. There were supposed to be one big story. But yeah, the whole idea, again, somebody had played around with the idea of the letter of the law, and when they introduce any kind of superhero or anything like that, and there's been so much Judge Dredd stuff over the last 40 years that I know I'm forgetting a story or two that I read where a superhero actually did pop up. Now, not a lot to hit there with Dredd. What we got here? Yep, love Dredd. Kyle Walker, of course. Kyle Walker. I want you to look in the comments here. The uncanny Kyle Walker. Wacko. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize, man. But I believe I haven't watched his channel in a while, but I haven't been watching YouTube in a while. But that is the man who is the Judge Dredd / Doctor Who man to go to. Right? Go check out his channel. Subscribe to him if you're interested in any of this stuff. This man, I was on a live show with him where I got to see him hold up the first appearance of Judge Dredd. Right? That is the man to go to. Right? That is the man that I will shut up and just listen to and gaze at wonder and probably take notes while he's talking about Judge Dredd. All right. Yes. How do you feel about the Carl Urban Dredd film? It's a crime against nature that there's not a sequel or a TV show or anything with him playing the character. I thought it was perfect for what they could do. You also got to understand, I had to live through that abomination of the 90s with Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone and Deuce Bigelow, Mel Gigolo in it. I've come to peace with that movie. I can kind of watch it now if I have to, but oh my God. Oh my God. Judge Dredd is not Demolition Man. That's all I'm going to say. But no, the freaking Carl Urban Dredd film, it's right over here. I'm so ready for a sequel. I'm on record in other videos whenever I've talked about Dredd to bring that movie up. And what was the best thing about it is that when it ended, that was just another day at the office. To me, that's I loved how they handled it. Judge Dredd walks out and like that's just one case. That's a day at work. That oh my God, it was amazing. I think Eagle began reprinting Dredd in the early '80s. I have some of them. I acquired them probably about 5 years ago. I acquired a short box full of Eagle reprints from Britain over here. Gray Man Media. I have 3 tablets and not one comic book on them. And there anything action comic book? Is there anything action comic book, either in America or Japan, we're spending money on to download? Got 1 tablet with 120 gigabytes and love pre-90 stories. Um, well, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. I don't know what your tastes are, but if you're going to download anything, I figure you want to make sure you get some quality. I would do anything Alan Moore. Guys, throw him some comments there. In Mega City One, vigilantism is against the law. Yeah, it's a real law. You know, that's the whole deal. That's I just like the idea of comics getting around to it and acknowledging that anything superhero is against the law. Thomas Williams, nice to see you, sir. All right. Ever read Xenozonic? Or I know it. Yeah, okay. Dinosaurs and Cadillacs by Mark Schultz. Yeah, I've read a little bit of Mark Schultz. I've read a little bit. It's good stuff, man. That guy is he's that guy could have that guy you could have dropped that guy into EC Comics in the '50s and he would have like fit in perfectly. Xenophonic Tales, XEN, yeah, Xenophonic Tales. All right, awesome. Now the one book that I've just pulled the trades. I'm missing number 7, number 23, and maybe one other issue. But I had the entire, I don't know, 72 issue run. I've got all the miniseries. I've got Hero Gasm. I've got all the stuff from it. And you're going to be hearing about it because I think it's a show on like Amazon Prime or something. Now, guys, I have not had television regularly in the house since 2008, 2009, whatever. So I know all this stuff's getting downloaded. I freely admit I use pirated websites that pirate these shows if I want to watch something and binge. I just recently jumped back into Netflix. You know, now that Netflix has greatly improved in like, I don't know what, the 8 years since I had it the first time around. So, you know, I play around with it. Man, they got the look of Judge Dredd comics down to the '90s flick. Carl Urban is vastly superior, but I have a soft spot for Stallone's movie. Yeah, I can go with that. That's what I mean. I have a soft spot. I was angry with that movie. Um, there we go. You're talking to him. Pre-90s storylines based but not touched by '90s cartoons. Remember Spider-Man magazine with Will o' the Wisp? That was worth reading for me in the mid '90s. Yeah, that's what I mean. They always had some really cool characters at Marvel that you could be a fan of, but they never really got big. The Wrecking Crew, Will o' the Wisp was good of them. I thought Full Killer looked fantastic. I was waiting for something with him, and then there was a Spider Woman. There was a Spider Woman villain, and that I remember seeing, where he had like a black bodysuit, but his face was white, and he almost had like a white tank top over the black suit, and he had a gun and white boots and white gloves, but the rest was black. I kind of dug that guy. I mean, there's a few guys, but Full Killer, I had a whole story in my head of what his deal was, you know. All right, Thomas, good to see you here, man. Okay, but anyway, getting to it. So the third book I'm going to bring out where it goes into the hypocrisy and the fraudulent stuff and the government conspiracies and really looks at heroes, you know, much like a lot like Marshal Law did, in my opinion, but completely different, is The Boys by Garth Ennis. Okay, I've got a bunch of them in trade, but like I said, I got almost a full run of everything. But The Boys comes in, and this is brutal. This is this is the book that is my guilty pleasure. All right, this is the one where I've actually got to talk to Garth Ennis about it. Okay, it's pinned on my Twitter. You can see like, I don't know, 20 seconds of our conversation. uploaded it to YouTube a couple of weeks ago and stuff, right? This is the one that just takes it to a whole new level, man. You've got like a black ops team whose whole job is to keep these heroes in check and go after them when they're doing shit. You got the Seven, which mixes the Avengers and the Justice League. You got this story that is just messed up about the X-Men, who are known as the G-Man. All right, you go in there and it calls out the hypocrisies, the things, the gluttony they did. It's almost like it's 80s decadence that's in these. I mean, they start out with a team that is loosely based on the Teen Titans, okay? And it's one of the reasons it got dropped by DC Wildstorm and they gave Garth the rights back. But one of the first things they do is you see anybody that gets powers, they get it from like a blue powder, I think, if I'm remembering right. And these loosely based on the Teen Titans satire characters are you just see like a hallway with a bunch of doors and you hear somebody yell switch and all these heroes are running back and forth dressed like Winnie the Pooh, meaning they have no pants on. And when you turn out to find out they give hookers the blue powder so they can keep up with the superheroes and they're switching prostitutes. They get into a fight with the boys who will take the blue powder to be able to fight them and stuff like that. And one of the guys who looks like Simon Pegg actually killed one of them when he was laying there. They see his pants move in his butt and a hamster crawls out. Okay. But they do other things too, like the government uses comic books as a propaganda. There's one character who does the comics and does the research and puts out these stories to the publics to make the heroes look good, yet there's sexual deviance and there's messed up. And people get killed. There's collateral damage. There's never, it talks about how they're never really, you know, made to pay for this stuff. Let's see what we got going on here. Brian Boland did great Judge Dredd art in Camelot 3000. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, that Judge Death Lives trade here. It's got some of Boland's work from 1980 in here, where we get the introduction of Judge Death and his horsemen and stuff, or whoever they are. And it's just as fresh today as it was back then. I liked the boys at first, but lost interest before finishing my second trade. Maybe one day I'll give it a try. I don't push the book on people. I enjoy it. It has its ups and downs. It's ups and downs. It's had storylines where I just had to walk away, and it took me a while to come back to finish the story. I mean, Garth took some stuff out there and really put it out there. I mean, you're more. It's more like you're watching a spectacle than reading a story sometimes. Like you just can't take your eyes away from it, even though you really want to. Oh my God, what am I looking at? You know. I'm one of 5 people who love the Spider Clone storyline from the mid 90s. I bought them all and followed like a chick followed the fall of Samantha Brady from Days of Our Lives. Um, Now, one of my live streams that I've done since I've come back to doing these is I'm talking about people going back and they're collecting full sets of stories and crossovers and stuff, and they're cheap. And even though, you know, like the Spider Clone saga you're talking about, people hated it when it came out and they kept pushing it and going with it. And we got Ben Riley and all this stuff, and then they just really quickly tied it all up, you know, and trying to get out of it and stuff, right? And now people are going back, and I think that's because it's new to people that are coming in there, and it's cheap, and the quality of the new books coming out. You know, why follow a book that's just going to lose your interest or have another reboot or going to be late? Just the quality's not there, the art isn't there, the storytelling isn't there. So people can go back and they read these things and it's new to them. And compared to what we have now, that stuff is like Shakespeare sometimes. So don't be ashamed, man. Like what you like. Put it out there, you know. Boland was killing it on Dredd. Yep, the heroes and the boys are jerks. Oh, I got one held for review, but I can't look at it. I'm going to go ahead and show it. There we go. Yeah, the heroes are, I mean, they really take the heroes down. The X-Men story where they're the G-Men, that's the one that messed me up. That's the one that messed me up. And it does have to tell you. And the problem with it, though, is that when Garth Ennis brings these things up sometimes, you do have to ask what kind of parents would let their kid at puberty go off with this bald-headed man in a wheelchair who says he has a mansion full of kids and they'll get an education. You know what I mean? I mean, like, oh, you know, that makes sense, you know. But you gotta understand, Garth Ennis does not like superheroes to begin with. One of the heroes that he hates the most, or used to at least, was Green Lantern. So my mouth dropped when he put him in Hitman. You know, had Green Lantern there. But yeah, Garth Ennis does not like superheroes, and it kind of shows. Even though he gave Superman a lot of respect in Hitman, there's an issue where he meets Hitman on a rooftop, and there's a little bit of he has Hitman be Tommy Monaghan be sort of starstruck by him, and says some very complimentary stuff to him. The heroes and the boys, everyone in the boys, yeah. Then again, I can't call the superheroes and the boys heroes. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. They were propaganda. There was, they Garth Ennis built a world to where like the comic books were used as propaganda to make the heroes look good, even when they messed up bad, and they figured they were untouchable. And the whole point is power corrupts. And without accountability, power corrupts. Now the boys themselves weren't exactly choir boys themselves, but that's what's amazing about it. It makes you question things like that, and it's all done in story and with humor and satire, and then it gets a little real every now and then. That's the magic of it. Speaking about the boys, it has a trailer for a TV show officially. I skimmed through a trade about a month ago, and the so-called good guys were having an orgy. That was Herogasm. Now, I can't. We're really touched on some stuff here, but what Garth Ennis came up with is that whenever one of the things about the public being gullible when it comes to our heroes is that if they go off to space, we just have their word that they're saving us from an invasion or a big crossover or a crisis on infinite Earths or a secret war they're fighting. What they really do is they're going to an island in the Bahamas and they're having a week of debauchery, and it's a huge. It's terrible. I know what they've done. Yeah. Like I said, I don't push the book on people at all. Yeah, there's all yeah. It's just Enzo Matrix. What you saw there is just what your comment there about the boys' book. That's just another issue. When you pick it up, you just never know what's going to happen. Enos really wants readers to know he doesn't like superheroes. Yes, he does. But he's cool to talk to. When I met him that one time, that was awesome. He's put out some really good books. Um, yeah, I think he's a really smart writer, even though it sometimes feels like he's using these books to deal with things he's got going on in his head or something. Sometimes is how it comes off. I feel like he's using his writing to be a counselor sometimes. I don't know. I don't know. The Boys is not that. And he has to mention it every time. Yep. I still maybe he's one of those writers that hates that he ended up in comics, so he takes it out on the heroes. I mean, one of the first works, or maybe his very first work at Marvel, was Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, which I have, and I think that's actually how I found Garth Ennis. Was through that one shot. I walked into a comic book shop and I'm like, I saw that cover and I'm like, yeah, I'll get this. And I was amazed when I read that story how some of the ways the heroes were killed we talked about on the back of a bus in 1983 with my friends when they were still in the comics. It's amazing. All right. So that's about it. When it comes to the boys, I could talk about this all day, but it talks about the sexual deviance that come in, the fetishes and the way that power can corrupt people and how people seem to think just because they're like rock star superheroes and things, they can get by with whatever they want to do. Um, and there's a big master plan going on by the butcher in there, and everybody's been touched by heroes in a way that they're not inspired, but they have their lives ruined by them or touched, or somebody died and things like that. So I just kind of think it's sort of cool that it's just a cool topic for a live stream video. Is what I'm getting at here. It really kind of inspired me. I started thinking about all these books, and again, like I said last week in my post-apocalyptic video, this is not the end all be all of this sort of book. I think it's a minor genre that you could actually collect in a way where the superheroes or the bad guys or explorers, their motives, and why do we trust these people, and you watch the stream, you made it this far. All right, so we'll take a few more questions and I want to have to go here, guys. I got a later start on this one where the first time around didn't go well. What's your take on the world of original primetime superheroes, Automan, the Manimal, and Mantis? I swear, man, I'm getting to wonder, Gray, man, if you followed me on Facebook or something, because I've always when it comes to Automan, Manimal, Phoenix, the Man from Atlantis, the Misfits of Science, all these little shows from the 70s and 80s that didn't really kind of make it, even Airwolf, I'll throw out there and stuff like that. I've always had in my head where I wanted to see a crossover. And it's probably because when I was 12 years old, Crisis on Infinite Earths came out, and it crossed over all those DC characters, and my mind is constantly seeing threads of things connected. You know what I mean? So I've always wanted to see like this low budget, huge TV movie where all these characters meet and you find out they're in the same world and they have their own kind of crisis. They're horrible. So and I've talked about this. That's what's so funny about you bringing that up. Yeah, I've talked about that for years, and I've actually talked about it recently on Facebook. It blew some people's minds, when I said it on there. Thanks for another great stream. Learn something new every time from both you and the chat. Nice, Leo. Glad to see you, man. Gray Man Video. I'm 40, dude. Awesome. All right. I'm still a little older than you, but we're from that same era. That's awesome, man. Misfits and Sight was like a weird pseudo X-Men. I enjoyed it. Yeah, and when it comes to old TV shows, I'm on pure memory. I'm on pure memory. I mean, you had the big ones like Wonder Woman and Incredible Hulk. They've been in reruns and things like that. But when you get into like Phoenix and Automan, Manimal, you're lucky to find the intro on YouTube. Beauty and the Beast. I even like the Beauty and the Beast TV show by Ron Perlman in the late '80s, '90s. I think it was the '90s. And it was also around the same time that I thought CBS was nailing it because we had the Flash TV show, Beauty and the Beast. I was like, what are they doing? Because this was you understand CBS was for the demographic of people over like 50 to 65 back in the time when I was a teenager and stuff. I watched I watched Murder She Wrote with my grandmother. So the A-Team were superheroes too. They fired guns everywhere, exploded vehicles, but nobody ever got hurt. That's the thing about the '80s. And the thing I want to say is like the anti-heroes. That's a whole other thing where the Punisher is a serial killer and Wolverine, I think, is all that stuff. But the A-Team, the Transformer and GI Joe cartoons, anything you had your lasers and your bullets or whatever and stuff like that, but nobody ever got shot, and it would be everywhere. Warren Ellis's Marvel Ruins was something. Yeah, I have that here. I read it. I didn't like it, and I actually think Warren Ellis has come out saying he didn't like it. It was too much. It was just too much, man. They also came out with this weird story that I would put in there where they took Spider-Man, and this is like in the 2000s, like 2005, 6, 7 or something. But they did a prestige format miniseries with Spider-Man where it was like Dark Knight Returns, and he killed Mary Jane with radiation whenever they had sex and he ejaculated. So yeah, that's what killed her over time. It was a weird Dark Knight Returns like story with Spider-Man that I just was like, how the hell did this happen? Warren Ellis's Thunderbolts was great. That was cool. That had a reveal that I did not see coming with that first issue where you find out they're the Masters of Evil. The first year of that book was fantastic, and then it kind of turned into something else. They started accepting being heroes in a weird way. And I think Kurt Busiek even played with Atlas about having to. Wait a minute, not Atlas. Atlas, the Beatles, somebody. There was a few characters, if I remember right, where they were like, we really need to make amends, And I think one of them actually ended up going to jail and stuff, and that's where the book went downhill. Then they pulled in Hawkeye, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, Hawkeye was a villain in the '60s, but why? Well, yeah. Anyway, Knight Rider was great. Yep, they did it did it for the money and the crafts and the comedy. Duke was stabbed with a freaking snake. I think I remember that. Jessica Fletcher, the actual murderer, she killed them all. She was like, yeah, 11, 12 years of her being a serial killer, and we never knew it. People started wondering. Airwolf was better than Knight Rider. Rest in peace, Jan Michael Vincent. Oh, you mean Marvel Knights Spider-Man? I don't know what it was, man, but it was something. I read it and I'm just sort of like, where did this come from? What are they doing? I mean, it came and went. All right, guys, that's it. We've gone over our hour here. Thanks for everybody coming out there. Like I said, subscribe. Jessica Fletcher was the actual murderer, definitely. Happened to G.I. Joe, the movie, the animated one, the only one that mattered. Yeah, I hate the fact that the only death we really had in all those movies that I can remember from, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, was Optimus Prime dying. And the mothers got mad about that, said you took a good role model for our kids and killed them, So, yeah, when you piss off the moms, you know you did something wrong there. Mattel, Hasbro, whoever. All right, guys. Hey, yeah, good talking to you too, Gray Man Media. Thanks for everybody that's popped in. But like I said, hit the bell so you know when this is popping up. Everybody subscribe, tweet this thing out, get it up there. I lost a bunch of subscribers, which is all right, and gained a few more, but my channel is actually doing great. And Thank everybody that pretty much shows up for these, and anybody who comments on these live streams. You're as much as the show. It wouldn't be the same without you. And Like I said, as always, put down anything you want me to maybe try to talk about sometime. All right, guys. Later.